Well, the latest release of Epstein files have revealed bombshell emails from Sarah Ferguson, the former...
In 2011, Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, accepted money from a man whose name had become synonymous with some of the most serious allegations in modern history.
Every day, somebody writes absolutely diabolical things about me, but I know that's not me.
She admitted it publicly. She expressed regret. She said she made a terrible mistake. And none of that mattered, because the damage wasn't in the transaction. It was in what the transaction revealed.
Sarah Ferguson, she's been making headlines over the weekend. She sent an email to, and it's now been made public, and she called him a supreme friend. Now this, of course, Russell, was after
that when faced with financial desperation, she accepted help from someone whose proximity alone was toxic. And in doing so, she demonstrated a failure of judgment so profound that no apology could reverse it. This is not a story about crime. Sarah Ferguson was never charged with anything. She did nothing illegal. But legality is not the same as judgment. And judgment, once compromised publicly, becomes a permanent stain. Because reputation is built on decisions. And some decisions, once made, can't be unmade.
That's the front page of the Mail. Will the King now banish Fergie? Just one of many headlines about the Duchess of York this morning, as 7 charities drop her as patron or ambassador. Now, as we discussed on the show yesterday, it follows the discovery of an email from 2011.
The payment happened in 2011. Ferguson was in severe financial trouble. She owed creditors. Her business ventures had failed. She'd been trading on her royal connection for years, doing paid appearances, endorsing products, trying to monetize proximity to the monarchy. But it wasn't enough. She was drowning. And in that desperation, she turned to someone she knew. Someone her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, had maintained a relationship with despite growing public scrutiny. A financier who, by that point, had already been convicted and served time for serious criminal offenses involving minors. The amount was £15,000. The stated purpose was to help pay off debts owed to Ferguson's former assistant. The money came through Andrew, but it originated from the convicted financier. And Ferguson took it. The admission became fully public in 2011 during a series of interviews where Ferguson was asked directly about her financial situation and her connections. She didn't deny it. She said yes, she took the money. She called it a gigantic error of judgment. She said she regretted it. That she was ashamed. That she was in such a desperate financial position that she made a decision she shouldn't have made. And she framed it as a moment of weakness. As something that happened when you're not thinking clearly. When you're just trying to survive.
A scandal is unfolding around Britain's Duchess of York. Sarah Ferguson flew to Los Angeles to receive an award for her charity work. But Terrell Brown reports she's also under fire for apparently trying to sell access to the royal family.
£500,000 when you can, to me, open doors.
But the problem with that framing is that it assumes the issue was the desperation. It wasn't. The issue was who she chose to take money from when she was desperate. Because there are levels of desperation. And there are lines that, even in desperation, you don't cross. And one of those lines is accepting financial help from someone whose name is publicly attached to criminal convictions involving exploitation of minors. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a demonstration of fundamentally compromised moral boundaries. What people miss is that the transaction itself was secondary. £15,000 is not a life-changing sum. It's not enough to justify destroying your reputation. But Ferguson took it anyway. And that decision communicated something far more damaging than financial need. It communicated that proximity to a convicted predator was acceptable as long as it solved a problem. That the symbolism of the money mattered less than the immediate relief it provided.
Every day, somebody writes absolutely diabolical things about me, but I know that's not me.
That she either didn't understand or didn't care what accepting that money would mean. And the timing made it worse. By 2011, this man's history was not a secret. The conviction was public. The details were public. The media had covered it extensively. Anyone with basic awareness knew who he was and what he'd done. And Ferguson, who had spent years navigating media scrutiny, who understood how associations worked, who knew that proximity could ruin you, still took the money. The institutional response was silence. The palace didn't defend her. They didn't comment. They distanced. Because defending her would mean acknowledging the relationship. Acknowledging that Andrew had maintained a friendship with this man even after the conviction. Acknowledging that Ferguson, who was no longer a working royal but still carried the title Duchess of York, had accepted money that came from that friendship. And the palace couldn't afford that association. So they said nothing. And that silence was its own verdict. The uncomfortable truth is that Ferguson's real mistake wasn't taking the money. It was believing that her explanation would be enough. That if she admitted it, expressed regret, and framed it as desperation, people would understand. But people didn't understand. Because the explanation didn't change the symbolism. It confirmed it. It confirmed that when Ferguson needed help, she went to the wrong place. And that going to the wrong place didn't bother her enough to stop her. This is where reputational damage becomes permanent.
At a very rare outing with the royal family, standing alongside them as if disgraced Prince Andrew was back in the fold. But these new details and ties have come from Fergie.
Not because of what you did, but because of what doing it reveals about your judgment. Ferguson could have said no. She could have found another way. She could have defaulted on the debt. She could have declared bankruptcy. She could have done a dozen things that would have been humiliating but wouldn't have attached her to a convicted criminal. But she didn't. She took the money. And in taking it, she demonstrated that her boundaries were negotiable. The contrarian view here is that the issue was not the money itself. It was the failure to understand what accepting it communicated. Because Ferguson seemed to believe that as long as she didn't personally commit a crime, she'd be fine. That proximity wasn't participation. That taking money from someone wasn't the same as endorsing them. But reputation doesn't work that way. Reputation is shaped by association. By who you're willing to stand next to. By who you're willing to take help from. And when you take help from someone whose name is synonymous with exploitation, you're signaling that exploitation isn't a deal breaker for you. And people noticed. The media covered it extensively. Charities distanced themselves from her. Business opportunities dried up. She became, in public perception, someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted. Not because she committed a crime, but because she made a choice that revealed how compromised her moral framework was. Ferguson tried to repair the damage. She gave interviews. She apologized repeatedly. She distanced herself from Andrew's ongoing relationship with the financier. She said she should never have taken the money. That it was the worst decision she ever made. That if she could go back, she'd do it differently. But none of that changed the fundamental fact. She took the money. And she took it knowing who it came from. What people miss is that this wasn't a scandal in the traditional sense. There were no leaked documents. No hidden transactions. No secret recordings. Ferguson admitted it herself. She volunteered the information. She thought transparency would help. That if she just owned it, people would respect the honesty. But transparency doesn't erase judgment. It just makes the judgment more visible. The fallout wasn't immediate in a legal sense. There were no charges. No investigations. But the reputational fallout was total. Ferguson became a cautionary tale. A symbol of what happens when you let desperation override judgment. When you accept help from the wrong people. When you prioritize solving a problem over understanding what solving it that way will cost you. And the cost was permanent. Because you can apologize for a lot of things. You can apologize for mistakes. For errors. For lapses in judgment. But you can't apologize your way out of demonstrating that your judgment is fundamentally compromised. She was wrong. And that wrongness became the defining fact of her public identity. Not the divorce. Not the scandals. Not the tabloid coverage. But the single decision to take £15,000 from a man whose name should have made the money untouchable. That decision stained her. Not because it was criminal, but because it was a choice. A choice that revealed judgment so poor that no amount of regret could undo it. Reputation is damaged by choice, not by crime. And Sarah Ferguson chose wrong. Not in desperation, but in a failure to understand that some money costs more than it's worth, and that the cost isn't measured in currency. It's measured in credibility, in trust, in the perception that you know where the lines are and you won't cross them. She crossed one, and the stain has never washed out.